Helena Petrovna von Hahn, more popularly known as Madame Blavatsky or HPB, came from a noble family in Ukraine. Her father, Peter von Hahn, was a descendant of German nobility, while her mother, Helena Andreevna Hahn, came from one of the oldest families of Russian nobility, and was also a celebrated novelist. As a child, she would often have visions and displayed clairvoyance, as well as other metaphysical phenomena. Years later, she travelled throughout Europe and the Middle East, studying under various teachers and Sufi saints. She met her teacher, an Indian yogi named Master Moria, in London, who later directed her to go to New York in the United States. Once there, she founded the Theosophical Society. In 1885, she started to write The Secret Doctrine, which was finally published 3 years later, in 1888. The Secret Doctrine has been acknowledged by many as one of the most remarkable books in the world. It is considered to be the Bible of Theosophy, a sourcebook of the esoteric tradition that outlines the fundamental tenets of the secret doctrine of the past ages. Published as 2 volumes during her lifetime, The Cosmogenesis and Anthropogenesis, The Secret Doctrine explains the origin and evolution of the universe and humanity through an account of root races dating back millions of years. Although the writer of The Secret Doctrine, Madame Blavatsky, often expressed that she was only the compiler of ancient wisdom that was passed on to her. The true authors of the work were her teachers, the Mahatmas, or Great Souls, who were the guardians of the secret wisdom of the ages. Today, on Between Master and Disciples, we invite you to listen to excerpts from The Key to Theosophy, Theosophical Teachings as to Nature and Man, written by Madame Blavatsky.
You do not accept then the well-known explanations of biology and physiology to account for the dream state?
We do not. We reject even the hypotheses of your psychologists, preferring the teachings of Eastern wisdom. Believing in 7 planes of cosmic being and states of consciousness, with regard to the universe or the macrocosm, we stop at the 4th plane, finding it impossible to go with any degree of certainty beyond. But with respect to the microcosm, or man, we speculate freely on his 7 states and principles.
How do you explain these?
We find, first of all, 2 distinct beings in man, the spiritual and the physical. The man who thinks and the man who records as much of these thoughts as he is able to assimilate. Therefore, we divide him into 2 distinct natures, the upper or the spiritual being, composed of 3 principles or aspects, and the lower or the physical quaternary, composed of 4, in all 7.
The septenary nature of man. Is it what we call spirit and soul, and the man of flesh?
It is not. That is the old Platonic division. Plato was an initiate, and therefore could not go into forbidden details, but he who is acquainted with the archaic doctrine finds the 7 in Plato's various combinations of soul and spirit. He regarded man as constituted of 2 parts, one eternal, formed of the same essence as the absoluteness, the other mortal and corruptible, deriving its constituent parts from the minor created gods.
Man is composed, he shows, of 1. A mortal body, 2. An immortal principle, and 3. A separate mortal kind of soul. It is that which we respectively call the physical man, the spiritual soul or spirit, and the animal soul or the nous and psyche. This is the division adopted by Paul, another initiate, who maintains that there is a psychical body which is sown in the corruptible or astral soul or body, and a spiritual body that is raised in incorruptible substance. Even James corroborates the same by saying that the wisdom of our lower soul descendeth not from the above, but is terrestrial, while the other is heavenly wisdom. Now so plain is it that Plato and even Pythagoras, while speaking but of three principles, give them 7 separate functions in their various combinations, that if we contrast our teachings, this will become quite plain.
Now what does Plato teach? He speaks of the interior man as constituted of 2 parts, one immutable and always the same, formed of the same substance as deity, and the other mortal and corruptible. He explains that when the soul, Suke, allies herself to the nous, or divine spirit or substance, she does everything all right and felicitously. But the case is otherwise when she attaches herself to anoia, or folly, or the irrational animal soul. Here then we have manas, or the soul in general, in its 2 aspects. When attaching itself to anoia, or our kama rupa, or the animal soul in esoteric Buddhism, it runs towards entire annihilation as far as the personal ego is concerned. When allying itself to the nous, or atma buddhi, it merges into the immortal, imperishable ego, and then its spiritual consciousness of the personal that was becomes immortal.
The distinction between soul and spirit. Besides Plato, there is Pythagoras, who also followed the same idea. He described the soul as a self-moving unit or monad, composed of 3 elements, the nous or spirit, the phrane or mind, and the tumos or life, breath or the nefesh of the Kabbalists, which 3 correspond to our Atma Buddhi or higher spirit soul, to Manas or the ego, and to Kama Rupa in conjunction with the lower reflection of Manas, that which the ancient Greek philosophers termed soul in general we call spirit, or spiritual soul Buddhi, as the vehicle of Atma, or the agathon or Plato's supreme deity. The fact that Pythagoras and others state that phrane and tumos are shared by us with the animals proves that in this case the lower monastic reflection or instinct and kama rupa or animal living passions are meant. And as Socrates and Plato accepted the clue and followed it, if to these 5, namely agathon or deity or atma, suke or soul in its collective sense, nous or spirit or mind, phrane or physical mind, and tumos or kama rupa or passions, we add the eidolon of the mysteries, the shadowy form or the human double, and the physical body, it will be easy to demonstrate that the ideas of both Pythagoras and Plato were identical with ours.
Even the Egyptians held to the septenary division. In its exit they taught the soul, or ego, had to pass through its 7 chambers or principles, those it left behind and those it took along with itself. The only difference is that, ever bearing in mind the penalty of revealing mystery doctrines, they gave out the teaching in a broad outline while we elaborated it and explain it in its details. But though we do not give out to the world as much as is lawful, even in our doctrine more than one important detail is withheld, which those who study esoteric philosophy and are pledged to science are alone entitled to know.
The Greek teachings. We have magnificent Greek and Latin, Sanskrit and Hebrew scholars. How is it that we find nothing in their translations that would afford us a clue to what you say?
Because your translators, their great learning notwithstanding, have made of the philosophers, the Greeks especially, mysti instead of mystic writers. Take as an instance Plutarch, and read what he says of the principles of man. That which he describes was accepted literally. Let me give you an illustration in point. Man, says Plutarch, is compound, and they are mistaken who think him to be compounded of 2 parts only. For they imagine that the understanding or brain intellect is a part of the soul, or the upper triad, but they err in this no less than those who make the soul to be a part of the body, that is, those who make of the triad part of the corruptible mortal quaternary.
For the understanding or nous as far exceeds the soul as the soul is better and diviner than the body. Now this composition of the soul or psyche with the understanding or nous makes reason, and with the body or tumos the animal soul passion, of which the one is the beginning or principle of pleasure and pain, and the other of virtue and vice. Of these three parts conjoined and compacted together, the earth has given the body, the moon, the soul, and the sun the understanding to the generation of man.
This last sentence is purely allegorical, and will be comprehended only by those who are versed in the esoteric science or correspondences, and know which planet is related to every principle. Plutarch divides the latter into three groups, and makes of the body a compound of physical frame, astral shadow, and breath, or the triple lower part, which from earth was taken and to earth returned. Of the middle principle and the instinctual soul, the second part, derived from and through and ever influenced by the moon, and only of the higher part, or the spiritual soul, with the atmic and manasic elements in it, does he make a direct emanation of the sun, who stands here for Agathon, the supreme deity. This is proven by what he says further as follows.
Now of the deaths we die, the one makes man two of three, and the other one of or out of two. The former is in the region and jurisdiction of Demeter, whence the name given to the mysteries, Telene, resemble that given to death, Teleuta. The Athenians also heretofore call the deceased sacred to Demeter. As for the other death, it is in the moon or region of Persephone.
Here you have our doctrine, which shows man a septenary during life, a quintile just after death in Kamaloka, and a threefold ego, spirit soul, and consciousness in Devachan. This separation, first in the meadows of Hades, as Plutarch calls the Kamaloka, then in Devachan, was part and parcel of the performances during the sacred mysteries, when the candidates for initiation enacted the whole drama of death and the resurrection as a glorified spirit, by which name we mean consciousness. This is what Plutarch means when he says,
And as with the one, the terrestrial, so with the other celestial Hermes doth dwell. This suddenly and with violence plucks the soul from the body, but Proserpina mildly and in a long time disjoins the understanding from the soul. For this reason she is called monogenes, only begotten, or rather begetting one alone, for the better part of man becomes alone when it is separated by her. Now both the one and the other happens thus according to nature. It is ordained by fate, or fatum or karma, that every soul, whether with or without understanding or mind, when gone out of the body, should wander for a time, though not all for the same, in the region lying between the earth and moon, or Kamaloka.
For those that have been unjust and dissolute suffer then the punishment due to their offences. But the good and virtuous are there detained till they are purified and have by expiation purged out of them all the infections they might have contracted from the contagion of the body, as if from foul health living in the mildest part of the air called the meadows of Hades, where they must remain for a certain prefixed and appointed time, and then, as if they were returning from a wandering pilgrimage or long exile into their country, they have a taste of joy, such as they principally receive who are initiated into sacred mysteries, mixed with trouble, admiration, and each one's proper and peculiar hope.
This is nirvanic bliss, and no theosophist could describe in plainer though esoteric language the mental joys of Devachan, where every man has his paradise around him, erected by his consciousness. But you must beware of the general error into which too many, even of our theosophists, fall. Do not imagine that because man is called septenary, then quintuple, and a triad, he is a compound of 7, 5 or 3 entities, or, as well expressed by a theosophical writer, of skins to be peeled off like the skins of an onion. The principles, as already said, save the body, the life, and the astral eidolon, all of which disperse at death, are simply aspects and states of consciousness. There is but one real man, enduring through the cycle of life, and immortal in essence, if not in form, and this is Manas, the mind-man or embodied consciousness.
But what is Devashan?
The land of gods, literally, a condition, a state of mental bliss. Philosophically, a mental condition analogous to, but far more vivid and real than, the most vivid dream. It is the state after death of most mortals.
We appreciate your magnanimous company for today's episode of Between Master and Disciples. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television for Planet Earth, Our Loving Home, coming up next right after noteworthy news. We wish you and your loved ones much joy and abundance every day.
For more details, please visit www.suprememastertv.com/BMD